Okay.
Yeah.
I believe Adya is next.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Adya. I'm 15.
Hello.
You've had such an illustrious career. There have been so many illustrious illustrations to go along with your books. Could you please elaborate on the importance of illustrations and having an illustrious illustrator to do those illustrations?
Well, Adia, that's really a good question, and it addresses a very important part of my career. So, when I was in college, let me see where it is. When I was in college, and I was attending college for creative writing, and I was writing short stories, I was writing bits of novels. I really wasn't thinking about children's books so much. But then I met the illustrator, Nicole Rubel. So we met at a party. I know this is a long answer, but it's the complete answer. So we met as a party. I had to go to a costume party. I went to a school, Emerson College, which had a big theater department, and I was working there as a security guard. So the night of the party, I went into the theater department and I got a costume, and it was a giant rabbit. It was a giant white rabbit costume. So I put on my giant white rabbit costume and I went to the costume party. So there I was, the white rabbit, and then the illustrator, Nicole Rubel, was dressed as Alice, like Alice in Wonderland. And Alice in Wonderland runs into the white rabbit, of course, in the book. So I went up to her. I said, "Hi, I'm the white rabbit." And she said, "I'm Alice." So we started talking. And from that conversation, we both realized we had an interest in books. So we teamed up. And now this speaks to your question. So teaming up with the illustrator. So I would write the story, she would do the illustrations, and then we would put them together and we would make like a little, what they would call a dummy book or like a fake book. And I would type up the story and paste it on a piece of paper. She would do the illustration and we would just make like a fake book. And then we would call up the publishers on the telephone and go, "Hello, would you like to see our book?" And then they would say, picture book. And they would say, "Does it have pictures?" And we'd say, "Yes." So we would both go in and we would show it, they would read it, and then they would say, and this was the best part, they would say what was wrong with it. So you would get, even though you were being rejected, even though they wouldn't take the book, they would explain very deeply and in a detailed way what your mistakes were. Mistake of character, mistake of setting, mistake of plot or problem, mistake of rising action, no real conclusion. How did the characters change? What did they feel in the beginning? What made them feel differently at the end? So even though the illustrator and I teamed up, which was key, we had, before this book was published, this is the first book we had published, but we wrote and illustrated 12 other failed books. And we took them to, there were 3 publishing companies in Boston, and we would take them to each one. So imagine this. You want to be a writer. You team up with somebody, right? Let's say you're writing the story, and you team up with an illustrator, and you call up the publisher. We did that 36 times, and were rejected to our faces 36 times. But you know what it was like? It was like a graduate course. It was like a genius course. Because in the rejections, if you don't just crumble from the rejection, but if you listen to the editor carefully, you learn something new each time. And we did. And finally, we brought this in. And he said, "We'll take that one." And that was the first one. So all that work, all those 36 rejections, yes, I think of them, but I never feel bad about them. I always feel like, yeah, that's what I had to go through to get better. That's what I had to go through to become professional. And you know what? This book was published in 1976 when I was in college. I was in college, my last year in college and of undergraduate. And so that's 40 some years ago. And that book is still in print. That's a good one. You know, so all those rejections, I look at rejection and I go, what positive thing can I take away from rejection? And I think that attitude serves a curious, eager to get published, eager to achieve things person very well. Some people get rejected and they quit. We're not those people. Thank you.
I'm going to take a few leaves out of your book because I don't think I am a sore loser. I think a lot of us are sore losers. I'm so sorry, but yes, we are, unfortunately. But yes, that's so true. Every rejection has a message, and possibly we should take on those messages in the positive way. That's so right. Okay, we have Snehin coming up next.
Oh, good.
Hi, sir. I am Snehin, and it's a great honor to speak to a respected writer such as yourself. And I was really curious about a question that when a director, like a movie director, presents a movie, he or she already has somewhat decided in his mind the pace at which the movie is going to flow. So, does a writer also write a story with a reading speed in his mind? And is there an ideal reading speed to consume?
A great question. Really great question. So the difference is this. So when you write a book, you can actually stop time. You could stop time, absolutely. And you could just describe things, right? You could have a whole page of description of just one object, and it just stops it right there. The action stops. In a movie, they're always very concerned about action, 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 action. But in writing, we have the opportunity to take the camera into the heart and soul of the character. So we can stop in a book. You can stop and just talk about emotion, or talk just about fantasy. And so when I write, that's why I was saying earlier, when I write, I always think about half of the book, 50%, it's going to be the action. It's going to be the action going forward. But the other 50% is deep inside the character. And so that balances it out. And that's why movies so often fail, is they don't slow down enough to let us see who the character really is. They're always trying to show who the character is through the action. But we know that action is only one way to do that. Emotion is another way. Fantasy is another way. Pondering is another way. Figuring things out. Observing. Poetic moments. You know, your day is not a movie entirely. Your day is so much inside yourself. And sometimes films can't get that. Some great films do get it, though, but not all of them. And some books fail there, too. Sometimes I find that a lot of new writing is all about the action. The books are beginning to imitate films. Books are not spending enough time inside the characters. They're always about the action. But I think the real meaning of a book is not only how the character changes, but how you change too. And that is what makes a book successful. If you can change a person from writing a book, man, that's powerful right there. open a window on something. So whether you're writing or whether you're making movies, just think, how is this playing on the inside of the person viewing or reading? Okay? Give a lot of thought to that, because that's really where art excels at being uniquely beautiful, in that it changes something in you. It adds something in you. It doesn't take away. It adds another layer of meaning, thoughtfulness, visual quality to your life. So just a week ago, I was in Paris. So I had a little speaking in Paris, which was very nice to do. And then I went to the Louvre, to the great museum. No, I've been there many times. But you know what? I'd never been to the medieval sculpture area, the old French sculpture area. And I thought, you know what? I don't really have an interest in this. But we went. My wife was with me. We went anyway, because we said, we've never been to this section. We went. It was spectacular. It was brilliant. I felt so much. It was fresh. It was romantic. It was thoughtful. It engaged everything within me. And I thought, there I was thinking it was not going to be good. And it just spun me around and elevated me. So sometimes you have to do the opposite of what you need to do. Do the other thing, So don't do the same thing over and over again.
All right, thank you. Yes, that is absolutely true, I guess. And a lot of times, I think if you're visiting the same exhibit a second time, you observe it with different type of eyes, because the exhibit might remain the same, but you're not the same person. So that, of course, adds to it. I believe, Advay, you are up next. And yes, okay.
Good morning, Mr. Gantos. My name is Advay. I'm 14 and I live in North Carolina. I go to Apex Friendship High School. And you've obviously traveled around the world. You've been into the United States, possibly even in every state. Which state do you think was the most appealing to you as a writer, or which one you liked best? And also, do you still consider yourself a bluebird?
I'll take the last part first. So yes, I'm still a bit of a bluebird. I'm a very slow reader. I'm a slow reader. And I always have been a slow reader. And now I realize that I kind of like being a slow reader. Because when I read a book, I'm reading it at a pace in which I can see the book and feel the book. It's almost like I'm in the book, and living on the inside. So instead of just like pew, 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 getting through the book in order to answer the test questions, I'm just like allowing myself, like it's a dessert. I'm just allowing myself to indulge in the good book. That. As for the states I've been in, yeah, I've been in a lot of states, but I don't know. I live in Massachusetts, so I came here to go to college, and I started getting published here. I was a professor here, so this state has always been kind of friendly to me. But my home state is Pennsylvania, and when you're born in a state, you never forget that first love. So I have to say that, being born out in the country, I was born out in a little tiny town, started by Eleanor Roosevelt, Norvelt, Pennsylvania, and I love coming from that tiny town, and I love that Eleanor Roosevelt started it, because she was such a great Democrat, heart and soul for the people, and that's who she was, and she was so empathetic. She would start these little towns for out-of-work coal miners and out-of-work farmers and out-of-work laborers. And she was giving back all the time. And that was Eleanor Roosevelt, giving back. I look at America right now, It's not always about giving back. Sometimes it's just about taking. And giving back is the best. And I think when you write a good book, you're giving people something. Thank you.
Thank you. I think a lot of times as an author, you're giving people a lot of dreams, and that is a wonderful gift to give them. What we are going to do next is we are opening up the floor for a lot of other people to ask you questions, and they've been sending messages. But first and foremost, we will go with Tatiana. Tatiana, could you unmute Tatiana, please?
Good morning, Mr. Gantos. Thank you so much for taking the time to meet all of us. It's so wonderful to listen to you, really. I'm a teacher, and some of my students are actually present in the meeting, and I have a question that the answer to which will be probably very useful to them because they are all budding writers. So I would like to ask, is there any specific ingredient, element to a story that you think should be added to a story, to a book, to make it appealing to young adults?
Young adults specifically.
Yeah. Middle schoolers, maybe, young adults.
Yeah, but there are some things. Like, I do write young adult books like Whole of My Life, The Trouble in Me, Desire Lines. I think there's a couple more somewhere. So what am I trying to do in a young adult book, let's say? Whenever I'm thinking of a young adult book, I'm really not thinking of young adult book. I'm really thinking of the best book. And so, and I'm not afraid to be difficult in that book, because I always think, young adults are so smart. Move on up. If I make a reference that is not obvious, do I pull it out? Do I say, oh, a young adult wouldn't know that reference? Well, I better pull that out. No, I say no. The young adult should then go look that reference up. The young adult should seize that. I think when I'm thinking about young adult, I'm really trying hard to capture the true emotion of the story. Because I think young adults are always looking, just slightly looking for something that seems insincere, something that seems inconsequential, something that seems. The young adult field in America right now is a very judgmental field. It's a very, very judgmental. I don't even write for young adults anymore. I've given it up completely. I skip over the young adult market and I just write for adults now. I just can't get into it, because the criticism that comes from young adults or young adults in the field itself is saying, you didn't address this problem, you didn't address this issue, you didn't look at this issue, you didn't look at that issue, you failed to take into account this kind of person, this kind of person, this kind of person, this kind of person. I had the last book I had turned down. The main character had a prosthetic nose. A prosthetic nose. It was a great prosthetic nose. It's key to the whole plot. Why was that turned down? The sensitivity committee for the YA department said that there's going to be some person out there who will pick up that book, and they too will have a nose problem, and they will be ruined, they will be insulted, they will be hurt. And so you will inadvertently hurt them. I said, my character is the main character. He's the hero of the whole book, and the nose is really important. So, but that doesn't matter. Right now, what I'm thinking is, if I was a young adult, I would be reading adult literature. I would be moving on up. I'd be trying to search out the sincerity. And so I would just be, as a teacher, even when I taught YA Lit, 50% of the books were adult books that looked back on, the main characters were looking back on their young adult years. And what we were talking about is is how is it when you write about yourself when you were younger? How is that different than writing in the moment when you are that young person? And so sometimes I think that what we get when we're looking at autobiographical books that look back on being a young person, they bring a little bit more depth and a little bit more thoughtfulness to it. And yet, at the same time, the advantage of writing in the moment as a young adult is that you might bring fresh perspective, sharper, keener, newer, faster, more unique emotions of the moment to it. So, there's a trade-off, but I would say that one of the things that I find is that sometimes young adults can write really well about their lives, but there's not a lot of gray area out here, that needs to be brought in. Just a thought, but I just hope the field itself starts to even out. The last 3 years in this field have been absolutely bleak.
Sometimes I feel that we've overdone the woke bit a little too much. It's a little too much.
Everything is everything is trying to move the needle, and sometimes I think we fail to just go in, just tell the story, just tell the story.
But I like the prosthetic nose, especially if everyone's going to go poking their nose in everyone else's business. It's ideal to have a prosthetic nose. That's my take on it. Okay, I'm sorry, but
and that was part of the story. That was just part of the story right there. You put your finger on it. It was part of the story. I said, have you never heard that? Have ever heard that expression? The activity committee. I just can't tell you how many people we get together, organizations of writers, and like the sensitivity committee. It's like the French Revolution, gone bad. It's like, off with their head. Yeah. So we're just waiting for things to okay, let's even out here. Let's make room for everybody at the table. I want everybody at the table. I want every perspective.